Right, so I'm here on the morning of the HSF karting event at Butmore Park with John Surtees. Hi, John.
Hi, good morning.
And of course, it's we're running the event here today at Butmore. Not perfect weather conditions, but nonetheless set to be a very, very successful event, no doubt.
Well, shall we say it's somewhat better than yesterday, weather to weather, in that it isn't actually raining at the moment. The track is just damp, but then we have some of the finest sort of young drivers, not just karters, but also youngsters who have transferred from karting into cars, who have come back to karts here, so they can deal with slicks and the dampness. It's yes, a very special event, one for the foundation, but also for those youngsters, because the range of prizes we have is so extraordinary. It's probably the best prize range that exists for any karting event in the world.
Fantastic, of course. As you mentioned, a wide array of drivers, a lot of celebrities turning up to cover the event as well. It's really grown in popularity over the last few years as well. You must be very, very impressed at the amount of publicity it gains.
Well, yes, the event has certainly brought a lot of support from the motorsport industry. This year, the quality is still there. We don't have the same numbers, but that's partly possibly due to the fact that the circuit, the race championships and everything else have all gone on that much longer. And this meant that it's fallen into the season, whereas before we were at the end of the season. I didn't want to put the event back further because of, again, the problems with weather. As it is, for a karting event, we are a little exception in that if the heavens really open, we do have wet tyres as well. Because if you're going to have some of the finest young drivers in the country, you've got to give them the best material. And certainly working with Club 100, we try and give them very even material so that they have the best chance possible for these wonderful prizes.
Fantastic. Of course, I remember actually racing here this time last year, as a matter of fact, at a 4-hour endurance race. It bucketed it down with rain, and it was a club kart, and there were no forms of wet tyres at all. So it's something that's, something of a bit of a commodity here, for sure.
Well, yes, that's something which on general corporate work and everything else, you have one tyre. This is partly for operational purposes and partly for things like, if you run with wet tyres, when do you change to dry tyres? And it's a case of it's far better an even playing field to maintain. We are doing a lot of testing since I've taken over at Butmore Park. We're doing a lot of testing with tyres to see where we can get tyres which are more suitable for both conditions. And so I hope that we actually have come up with compounds, etc., which will work better in the dry, but also in the wet.
Indeed. And of course, as you mentioned, you took over Butmore Park earlier this year. So how did that deal come about, and what was it that inspired you to take control of the circuit?
Well, Henry came here, my late son, when he was about 7.5 years of age. We're talking about, he was killed in 2009, and it was about sort of 10 years before that. And he came back and said, "Daddy, that's what I want to do." So we got involved in karting. Bill Sisley, the person who had developed the circuit, initially came on to me a little later and said, "John, we've got to try and do something about improving things at Butmore, otherwise I won't retain my license. And so, can you help?" So I got involved with helping because I developed, after I closed my Formula One team, I got involved in the construction industry with property development. So I helped with the building of his clubhouse. Then there were some other problems developing here at Butmore Park. As such, the overall park level, not just the karting side, and the freehold became available. So in order to secure it, I bought the freehold, and this had come after we'd lost Henry, and I thought, well, the foundation which we formed is there. It would be ideal if we can put a learning and training centre at Buckmore Park sometime, where we can get youngsters onto perhaps a career path. Not to make them necessarily racing drivers, Lewis Hamiltons or anything else like that, but to actually give them a career path associated perhaps with the motorsport industry. Because the motorsport industry is one which covers so many trades and professions and skills and has so many opportunities in it. And so I thought we might become a feeder to take these youngsters if we create an emotional first involvement into the education and training for careers. So the business of negotiating with Bill Sisley came about, and finally that came about just about 6 months ago now, and we were able to take it over so that we have a free hand on what we do. And now we're carefully analysing how we can improve it for the racing and the corporate, because of course we enjoy a very good corporate side here, and we're investigating the possibility of increasing the length of the circuit, which would also give another training circuit when it was broken up into a various number of circuits, and also seeing whether we can have an extension which will give us more facilities for creating that centre.
It definitely sounds that Buckmore Park has a bright future ahead of it, I'm sure.
Well, we're trying to do it. I think it's a very important part of the community. I think we can provide lots of enjoyment to lots of youngsters, and also to the not so young who come along and get away from that business desk or that activity which they need to have to earn their living, and to come along and enjoy coming together on a circuit which has a history of creating world champions and is probably one of the most challenging kart circuits in the world.
Most definitely so. Now, of course, we had a Henry Surtees Foundation Karting event earlier this year at Mercedes-Benz World,
Yes.
and raised, I think it was around £60,000 for HSF and for Brooklands as well, and that was a jolly successful event. So it's looking to be very good here. You must be sort of looking forward to things.
This event as such is not targeted totally at raising money, because we can't go along and ask very high sort of entry fees, etc., from these youngsters who are coming from the world of motorsport competition. So it's limited to what it would generate for the foundation. The important thing is we try and make certain that the foundation doesn't get involved in high costs, etc. We try and make certain that those are all absorbed elsewhere. But the foundation will earn a little, but the big emphasis is, yes, the foundation will get some exposure and also a little income from it, but also the young motorsport fraternity will have a helping hand in developing their careers, and hopefully that will also rebound on us from a point of view of assisting us in the future.
Brilliant. Well, that's absolutely fantastic, of course. And also, as you mentioned earlier, the array of prizes on offer here today for these youngsters is absolutely sublime. I mean, there's lots of tests and so on and so forth.
We are some sort of, it's a £500 entry fee, but some of the prizes and things which we have, would cost you £15,000 if you went into it, and that sort of money. So I don't think there's any of our prizes which are there which are not valued at more than at £500. So we have it's unique, and it's only possible because of the generosity of the people who have consistently supported us.
Wonderful. And of course, having been a very successful motorcycle and racing driver yourself, of course, I think it was 7, I was doing some research yesterday, 7 motorcycle championships and 1 Formula One World Championships. Are you very impressed with how safety has sort of come on? Because you race in an incredibly dangerous era, especially in Formula One.
Yes, well, safety in Formula One, the 1960s was possibly one of the least safe periods, largely because there was all these new teams coming about. It's a bit of a revolutionary period. You had Coventry Climax, the firm who used to do all the engines for water pumps and such like ancillary engines. They produced an engine which was suitable for motorsport, and then they produced a Grand Prix engine. And this followed on Tony Vandervelde building his Grand Prix car, which won the World Championship Constructors title. And you had Lotus and Cooper, etc., all build Formula One cars, which became very modern, but also starting, used lots of standard parts, weren't the strongest cars in the world, any of them, and you sat in tubular chassis with aluminium tanks alongside you, each side, over the tops of your knees and things like this, and so you had like a little petrol tanker you were racing in. But when, of course, more money came into the sport, in the 70s, you started to have all the developments which came about, late 60s in fact, like bag tanks, and then with the real money coming in, you had the survival cell, which is past my time, but the survival cell came in, but that was only because of basically the money which came from television and sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. Formula One's become a lot more corporate over the years, but it owes a lot to that, of course, with it becoming a lot more safer over the years as well. Well,
yes, it owes a degree of the safety to that corporate side. At the same time, it has pros and cons in that it also has meant that an awful lot of money has gone out of motorsport. And that, I think we do need to have a distinct look at the motorsport and ensure that these costs and complications which exist in junior formulas are seriously looked at and perhaps rectified, hopefully rectified, because there's far too many formulas in karting, in cars, etc., junior formulas, and there's too many things which add to the cost of it. And, it's exciting, and a youngster comes along and starts with his Bambino or something like that, and gets that enthusiasm of coming together with a piece of machinery. It may be sort of 5-6 years of age. It's wrong that it is such a high cost activity once you get a little further along the line, and that I'm sure could be addressed if we had governing bodies that really governed.
Exactly. I recall chatting to Jonathan Palmer earlier this year about the BLEC F4 Championship, something that's relatively cost-effective compared to a lot of junior formulae, where it's I think £100,000 for the season. You get your car, you get your entry fee, and so on and so forth. But you are right, of course. Costs are something that's making a lot of headlines in motorsport as of late. So it's something that certainly should be addressed in the future.
Yes, certainly. I certainly think that somewhere along the line there needs to be a real structure. Okay, you've got Formula One, but for youngsters that really show ability, and if you've got a structured series of formulas which lead up to Formula One, and where those that are successful in a formula get a helping hand as the prize for being successful into the next stage, I think is the thing to try and achieve. But you won't do it with so many commercial interests pulling in different directions and so many formulas.
Exactly. John, thank you so much for your time today. An absolute pleasure it has been to chat to you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I'm just looking at the skies and hoping it all sort of stays up there. And obviously the lads all have a very good time out there today.
Fantastic. Well, wish you the very best of success for the future, of course. And here's to a successful event at Buckmore Park today.
Okay, thank you.